In the deep forested areas of some Asian countries, if you are very lucky you may see the phenomenon of the Cordyceps, a type of fungus invading an insect species. First, it infects the insect, growing and seeding its way to the insect's brain. Slowly, it begins to take over the insect, wresting control of the insect's primary motor functions in order to cultivate itself. Eventually, the insect dies as the fungus takes over it completely, bursting through the insect's husk as it releases its toxic pollen, looking for its next victim. Now imagine that this fungus, that can only affect insects and arthropods, has mutated and can now affect humans. This incredibly invasive, incredibly persistent fungus released upon humanity. What would that mean for our future? This is the premise of Naughty Dog's 2013 action survival horror game, The Last of Us. Originally released for the PlayStation 3, this review and footage is from the remastered version for the PlayStation 4, which includes all the primary DLC from the original title. However, this review will only cover the base game. This review is also based on a normal difficulty run of the game. You play as Joel, a man in his late 40s who runs a smuggling business with his partner Tess in order to survive in this dog-eat Naughty Dog world. Joel is a no-nonsense, hardened man who has experienced all this desolate world has to offer, and this is reflected in his attitude toward both his allies and enemies. I often found that there were times that Joel would do something that I would disagree with as a person, like performing hideous acts of violence just to get some information from another character.
Where?
Whilst I understood why he performed some of these actions, it didn't really excuse them. Joining Joel for a majority of his journey is Ellie, a 14-year-old girl who Joel is tasked with smuggling to a group known as the Fireflies, for reasons that are initially unknown. Where the game really shines is in the characterization of the individual characters, especially in the relationship between Joel and Ellie. Whilst the relationship begins with Joel treating Ellie merely as an object to smuggle, the organic growth of their relationship makes it easier to deal with the often obscene and downright disgusting acts that are committed by both Joel and his enemies. Where Joel is a stern, no-nonsense man, Ellie provides some light-hearted moments which contrast with the violence of the world. Ellie was born after the Cordyceps outbreak, and thus has no knowledge of the world before it fell to ruin. It's this innocence and curiosity, and Joel's willingness to accommodate it, that makes the game enjoyable to experience. In fact, it was this relationship between Joel and Ellie that kept me playing the game right through to the end. Joining Joel and Ellie are a cast of other colourful and interesting characters. One thing that I really enjoyed about these characters was the subversions to typical stereotypes that the game presented. For example, there are prominently featured female characters, besides Ellie, that drive the narrative of the story, none of which are boxed into the damsel in distress trope. Every single female character has their own unique personality and purpose that places them in distinguished roles within the narrative. I really found this refreshing, and it left me wanting more games with strong central female characters. Additionally, I really liked the inclusion of an LGBTIQ+ character that wasn't a token gay character, which often seemed to have been the case in media and games in the noughties. On their journey, Joel and Ellie visit a man named Bill, a fellow smuggler that owes Joel a favour. Whilst it isn't explicitly stated outright in the game's dialogue, it is heavily implied that Bill is gay. This can be supported through how he refers to another man as his partner, and also in the gay pornographic magazine that Ellie steals from his belongings. It was later confirmed by the writer Neil Druckmann that Bill was written to be a gay character, and after initial readings, his dialogue was amended to make it even more obvious, as the initial script was a little vague with this reference. I really liked how Bill was just an everyday man fighting for his life, and that his sexuality was only a small part of who he was. The fact that Joel didn't act homophobic in any way toward Bill gave me hope that maybe the world is moving in the right direction, although I hope it won't take an aggressive Cordyceps invasion for this to happen. The aesthetic of the game is very gritty and carnal, particularly in areas where combat is prevalent. However, this contrasts harshly with the exploration segments where the beauty of the natural environment shines through, where like the Cordyceps, nature has aggressively encroached upon previously populated areas. This juxtaposition of nature versus industrialization, and the fact that we are living on borrowed territory, was not lost on me. Within buildings, the way light blooms through cracks in walls and ceilings adds a visual ambience that enhances the natural beauty of some of the locations. The degradation of the metropolis areas through the growth of vegetation and the abundance of water found in areas that you wouldn't expect always set me in awe, at least when I wasn't being attacked by enemies. Whilst exploring and in battle, the menus and user interfaces are very minimalistic, successfully integrating into the gameplay without pulling you out of the experience. Combat in The Last of Us takes place in a number of locations with both humans that have been infected by the Cordyceps fungus and with humans that have lost all sense of morality. The game encourages you to stealth through areas, however the AI of enemies is intelligent and highly reactive, and they often easily see you. When this happens, expect a swarm of enemies to descend upon you, ending in a quick death. If you don't want to stealth kill enemies, you can use an arsenal of long-range or short-range guns, handmade bombs, and modified melee weapons to fight your way through an area. I wouldn't recommend this option however, as Joel's health bar declines fairly rapidly when he is being attacked, and sometimes it's not easy to escape to a quiet corner and heal. One feature of the game that is included is real-time everything. There is no way to take a breather if you want to break from the game, other than pressing the pause button, which just pauses the game. For example, when you want to heal, you need to craft a medkit and then apply it in real time. If you are attacked whilst applying a bandage, you will have to start the application of the medkit again. In most cases, this will often end in Joel's death. If you are not battle inclined, you can try to sneak through some of the areas. Joel has the ability to crouch and listen for enemies, which can then show you where any moving enemy is, even through walls. Whilst this isn't very realistic, it was welcomed, particularly when trying to quietly take out clickers one by one. One thing I did like about the combat was how fluid it was. Environmental objects provide surfaces for Joel to utilize to disable his enemies. Whilst this gratuitous violence is something I didn't like about the game particularly, it was a system that I found was integrated smoothly and efficiently. The one thing that did irk me about the game though was that it is entirely skill based. As someone who tends to play a lot of RPGs, I like games that give you the opportunity to improve your character's statistics, so that you can have an easier time if you are finding the game difficult. Whilst there is a system in the game which allows you to improve aspects of Joel, you are required to find vitamins in order to do this, and these can be in scarce supply, even on normal difficulty. If you do enjoy challenging yourself however, this game would probably be one that you would enjoy, as every time you die presents an opportunity to reflect on what you did wrong, and how you can improve your tactics with the next attempt. You aren't going it alone however, as the AI for Ellie and other temporary characters that join Joel on his journey also respond well in combat, often tackling, shooting, or stabbing enemies that are too close for comfort. It's to be noted that they are immune to the instant kill ability of clickers and bloaters, which I will expand upon later, so this can be used to your advantage. However, they are not invincible. If they take too much damage and die, then it's game over. So always help your allies if you want to proceed smoothly through the game. I mean, they have your back, so you should have theirs. In The Last of Us, as previously mentioned, you will face two types of enemies, humans and those that have been infected with Cordyceps. Whilst the human enemies are straightforward and typical to a game of this genre, those that are infected can provide a little bit of a challenge. First are those in the initial stage of infection, simply called infected. These enemies act like your typical zombie that you would find in a game like Left 4 Dead. If one sees you, they will all swarm you. The second stage of infection produces enemies called clickers. These enemies are blind and cannot see you, so rely on sound to find their prey. If you step on broken glass or fire a gun, they will find you. If they even so much as touch you, it's game over. You cannot break free from a clicker unless you have a special ability, which you do not have in the early parts of the game. The last known current stage of the infection are those known as bloaters. These enemies are completely covered in the Cordyceps fungus, and have been infected for so long that they no longer appear human. They are very tenacious and can throw spores from their body at you. If they get their hands on Joel, it's also an instant game over, and there is nothing that can prevent this. Seeing Joel's face be ripped apart by the hands of a bloater is very traumatic, so please try to avoid having this situation occur. These challenges make combat interesting. However, I still found that after the upteenth time of fighting through an area to proceed to the next plot point, I just wanted the battles to end. If you make a mistake and die, you'll be set back to the start of the battle with all enemies respawned for that area. One thing that I will say was good, if not realistic, was that after every enemy was killed in a particular area, Joel would say something to indicate that the battle was finished. The soundtrack for The Last of Us is very limited in scope compared to other games I am used to playing. However, the music was used in appropriate places to evoke emotion. I felt that the limited use of music made the times that it was used all the more poignant. That's not to say there wasn't any sound at all, as usually you were greeted with ambient sounds from the environment, which definitely helped with immersing me in the game's ethos. The sound effects were all appropriate, and I especially found the sounds that clickers made creepy and effective at letting me know that they were nearby, and to expect danger. The voice acting did a lot to engage me with the characters. I definitely have to give kudos to Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, who respectively brought Joel and Ellie to life.
How'd I do?
How about something a little more your size?
The supporting cast also had excellent voice acting, which carried the emotions of the scenes and situations that were presented in both the high and low points. The Last of Us may be another morose dystopian future game, but it still manages to remain unique amidst the number of other games treading in this territory. The focus of the relationship between Joel and Ellie, above all else, helps the game's narrative to wade through all the dire and often shocking scenarios that you as a player are forced to endure. If you are looking for a game to play in which you can invest your emotions, and in turn reap the benefits of that investment by the end of the game, I would definitely recommend that you pick it up. With the advent of the release of a sequel game, which delves further into the life of Ellie and her complex character, I simply couldn't wait to finish this game, and now cannot wait for the sequel.